Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I want to start off by saying that brother Daniel Haqiqatjou is undeniably an intelligent brother, and he does a wonderful job in what he's good at. But there's a reason why we have great scholars who spend a lifetime learning, and there's a reason why we have YouTubers who don't. And the scholars never become YouTubers, and the YouTubers never become scholars. Real scholars are only interested in the absolute truth and presenting it truthfully, even if it's uncomfortable. So even if what they say sounds like madkhalism, the judgment of Allah is all that matters to them. That's why they respect the weight of the knowledge they're bringing to our attention. They know you're not just responsible for the person before you, but also everyone else your words will go on to influence, while always bearing in mind the anger and the pleasure of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. So when it comes to potential khuruj, they're fully aware, knowing the history, knowing the ijma' of the salaf, the great imma of the past, that as soon as you open your mouth about a ruler, the process has begun. You'll be held accountable for the role you play in the final outcome, and the proof for that is this.
It's mentioned in the Kitab Tabaqat al-Kubra and Tarikh al-Kabir, Bukhari even mentioned it, that a tabi'i, and some scholars they actually said he's a sahabi, his name is called Abdullah ibn Uqaym, that he said, لا أعين على دم خليفة أبدا بعد عثمان. From this day onwards, I'm not going to aid in the blood of anyone after Uthman. So they said to him, أبا معبد أو أعنت على دمه, did you aid and support in the blood of Uthman? Did you play a role in it? And then he said, إني أعد ذكر مساوئه عونا على دمه. I consider mentioning his shortcomings and his faults, I actually consider that to be aiding in his blood.
So what do? We start with the worst form of disseminating knowledge on khuruj possible, a 1-hour clip on YouTube. It's like someone explaining to you how to build a rocket on the back of an envelope. You're begging to be misunderstood, misquoted, and taken out of context. You have the option of giving a whole lecture series on the topic, inviting experts of the field on, but you go with a bare-bone 1-hour clip, and it's littered with insults. Imagine a teacher trying to convey knowledge that's supposed to be the most consequential knowledge you'll ever learn, and the teacher constantly insults you.
Bootlicker. A bootlicker is a bootlicker. Sorry, Akhi. You are a bootlicker. Madkhalis are agents of governments. Ran the Khalis.
Very wise. Do you want to abuse your audience or inform them? You seem confused. Look how Ustad Abdul Rahman Hassan, a Salafi, does an exhaustive 15-hour clip on this very subject. This is called respecting your audience. This is called giving the subject its due weight. He knows if he condenses his clip to 1 hour, he'll get more attention, more views, more subs. But he also knows what he'll be losing. Nuance, detail, the whole truth. Ustad Abdul Rahman Hassan is prioritizing the whole truth and how you get to this truth over simply winning an argument over a foe. He's thinking about the physical and spiritual welfare of his audience. He's thinking about his own spiritual standing before Allah Azza wa Jal, not just here's a nugget to excite the masses into a frenzy and boost my clout. Unfortunately, brother Daniel Haqiqatjou is willing to run the risk of being misunderstood, misquoted, exposing Muslims to the dangers of khuruj just as long as he can get his particular message out there inside an hour and win the debate. Shaykh Ibn Uthaymin says, some people, out of their pride and honor for the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they go and publicize the faults of the government among the people, inciting the hearts against the leadership. In turn, this causes the people to begin hating the authorities over them. This is actually a very serious mistake, contradictory to Islamic legislation, dangerous to the society, and a cause for future trials and tribulations. End quote. And that's one of the great dangers of getting your religion from the internet, isn't it? It's a dumbed down cartoon version of knowledge, and even if there are nuggets of truth there, the way it's often taught, it's not worth the paper it's written on. When you learn maths, nobody cares for the teacher's home life. Is he gay? Is he an alcoholic? Who cares? Because none of that changes how or what he teaches you. But with Islamic knowledge, the background matters, because he isn't only giving you facts and figures, he's shaping your akhlaq and adab, and therefore your children's and their children's. So you have to ask yourself, does he embody the sunnah and live what he preaches? Is his ilm deep enough? Where did he study? With whom? Which sheikhs? Because all this determines if his opinions are accompanied by ikhlas, tawakkul, upon Allah's qudra and al-qadr. Is his niyat guided by the correct manhaj? Is his taqwa upon the correct aqeedah? And all that then determines his character. Will he be patient or hasty? Will he be thoughtful or emotional? That's why Sheikh Karim Abu Zaid was trying to nail this in the AIM conference. Unfortunately, many misunderstood what was going on. Look at these brothers talking about khuruj. They might as well be talking about football. They think it's just an academic discussion and they can negotiate the usul around this topic in real time in front of a layman audience. They've got no idea whatsoever what spiritual and physical risks they're exposing their audience to. Totally blasé about potentially being the cause of others' sins and that sin spiraling out of control and depositing on their account. Oh, it's just a cosy, innocent chat between lads. A chat, by the way, in the age of social media, which can easily descend into sons, daughters, mothers and fathers being slaughtered. But hey, it won't be our daughters, it won't be our uncles and aunts, so why shouldn't I say stuff like,
these quote-unquote rulers in the Muslim world, they are arguably just puppets.
Oops.
Housing their soldiers, things like this that has been happening, like, and what does Ibn Hazm say? Like, no, this justifies not just criticism, it justifies rebelling against the rulers.
Oops. And he's laughing.
All of these conditions have already been met.
Are the mothers and fathers of countless sons and daughters who've perished in the failed Arab Spring laughing? Some of you thought it was a good idea, didn't you? And that's why, no matter how many times Daniel Haqiqatjou says,
I have never claimed that whoever does not rule 100% by the Sharia is automatically a kafir. There are complex contextual factors to take into account.
The overwhelming message that goes out is, you're allowed to publicly badmouth the ruler. That's it. That's all the audience hears, and it's being regurgitated over and over again in countless comments under other clips.
A default principle that it's permissible to publicly oppose the ruler whenever he violates Islam.
Actually, the asl isn't you enjoin good and forbid evil on social media from the other side of the planet. The asl is you enjoin good and forbid evil either with your hand, mouth or heart, depending on your ability and the situation in front of you, because you aren't burdened beyond your scope. And then if you can understand the situation on the ground, i.e. you're literally in that country, and then if you can make a difference, i.e. you have the ability and means, you won't get fellow Muslims massacred and turn society upside down, and you're qualified to weigh up all these variables and come to a balanced judgment, then you can open your mouth. Shaykh Ibn Uthaymin rahimullah says, quote, even if we were to assume the extreme, that a leader is a disbeliever, does this then mean we can incite the people to oppose him, even if it causes revolt, chaos and killing? This is definitely wrong. The kind of rectification and improvement desired will never come by this approach. Rather, the only thing it will bring is great corruption, because if, for example, a group of people rise up in opposition to the leaders of some country and those leaders have strength and authority that the opposing insurgents do not have, what will happen? Will this insurgent minority prevail? It will not. On the contrary, the opposite will happen. Evil and anarchy will result and the public affairs will be in complete disorder. End quote. If you don't tick all these boxes, I'm sorry, but the asl is you keep your mouth shut, because there's no such thing as absolute freedom of speech in Sharia, not if it means fueling a rebellion that gets thousands killed and violated. It's as simple as that. And this is what you hear from the big scholars, even in the clips Daniel Haqiqatjou uses over and over again. Daniel Haqiqatjou thinks Shaykh Uthaymin is supporting his argument here, but Shaykh Uthaymin rahimahullah is actually refuting him if you just reflect on the scholars' words, because scholars aren't YouTubers. Unlike them, they always qualify their statements. So, quote, different applications under different circumstances. What do you think these words mean? It means you don't just open your gob and incite people to khuruj like here.
Daniel is sharing a screenshot of an article from Arab News. It's about yoga being practiced in Saudi Arabia. And Daniel says, I hope all the true followers of the Salaf show their support for the ruler by sending their wives and daughters to these events. Anyone who doesn't send his wives and daughters is a Khariji dog.
And here,
Daniel says, oh, there's a hadith that says if the ruler abolishes the Sharia, enforces kufr laws, allies with kuffar to kill Muslims, implements social reforms to push believers into liberal atheism, we should only express disagreement in a private meeting with him, laughing emojis. Bootlicker, angry silence.
Especially not when you got a kingdom, as Shaykh Ibn Uthaymin said, with a global military and unlimited resources to defend itself. What's the great plan? You incite the Arab youth and watch the fireworks from California with a bag of popcorn and then see the death toll rolling on CNN? It's ludicrous. Shaykh Uthaymin rahimahullah in your clip is literally spelling it out, bro. Quote, wisdom must be utilized, end quote. In other words, know when to keep your opinions to yourself. If there's greater maslahah for the ummah by staying silent, then keep shtum. Or if you have the capacity and you think it'll work, advise the ruler in private with sincerity. You think scholars aren't doing such things. Just because they're not assassinating a ruler's character on social media, it doesn't mean it isn't happening in private, bro. The difference is they're doing what you aren't. They're constantly weighing up the maslahah and the mafsada before doing anything, as the Sharia instructs. the one we're supposed to be following. And the same with the brother's other contemporary example. What is Sheikh Ibn Baz actually saying here? Does his words really support Daniel Haqiqatjou's argument? Not really. Not if you understand the conditions the Sheikh is placing on public inkar. The Sheikh's saying you have to consider, quote, what is the best option for success, end quote. Okay, so is what Daniel Haqiqatjou doing, inciting khuruj on social media when there's no hope in hell of a rebellion succeeding, qualify as the best option for success? No. So how is Bin Baz supporting his position? Sheikh Ibn Baz rahimahullah is literally telling the brother, pick the best option. You haven't. You've picked the worst option. You want a rebellion, but yet you have no leaders, no military, no weapons, no hardware, without funding, based solely on the blood of Arab youth while you eat cheeseburgers all the way in the USA. This quote by Sheikh Al-Albani sums it up. They think that raising the voice against these rulers is enough in order to support Islam. That is not a recipe for success, and Sheikh Ibn Baz rahimahullah would tell you this himself if he could. Look, I'm sorry, but to make a video with a message that says,
if possible to privately advise the ruler, then it's better to do so. But if it's not possible to privately advise the ruler, then the default permissibility to publicly do inkar still stands.
Is the height of deen by social media. It violates this ayat. Because even before you get to the point of saying those words in public, where's the proper sunnah and etiquette around this subject? You have to follow the Sharia. Physically show your audience that you're worthy of even giving them this advice. And the first thing they'll be looking for is, are you appreciating the seriousness of the subject being discussed? I.e., this isn't discussing istinja, bro. This is khuruj, probably the highest constitutional act by the ulama besides declaring jihad. But by discussing it on an open platform, you're already violating this principle. It has to take into account the audience. Again, you have no idea who's watching your opinions, so you violate that too. And finally, the context, i.e., is toppling a particular regime in your capacity. How prepared are you, etc. If you and your clip doesn't address all that, it doesn't matter how beautiful and well constructed your advice is, or how many citations you put in there, or how amazingly you present the info, slick graphics and whatnot. If it isn't taking the sunnah, the context and audience into account by default, by definition, it is bad advice. By definition, it violates the asl. You're not born with a God-given right to criticize a ruler if it means violating the rights of your fellow Muslims. In Islam, the end doesn't justify the means. Remember the principle, everything that leads to haram is haram. As I said, it wouldn't matter if it was a spiritual issue, if we're disagreeing on the sifatullah, say, but siyasa and khuruj threatens the 5 maqasids of Sharia. And you're talking about a revolution that overturns an entire civilization, that impacts on so many rights of so many Muslims. That makes even talking about this subject a matter of huge significance and sensitivity. And that's why there's a sunnah for how to do it properly, to ensure that when khuruj does happen, the outcome will not be more bloodshed, but rather success. If you try to take the shortcuts, if you make the wrong people in charge of the process, unqualified people, insincere people, who will keep making blunders in the very basics, you will only get Arab Spring 2.0 over and over again. The Salafis aren't against khuruj, they're against the wrong khuruj. There's a difference. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.